All right, so I guess we can also start with some really brief introductions. My name is Alden Kroll, as it says in the corner. I am a designer here at Valve, and I've worked a lot on getting NextFests up and running and helping think through how we run them and how we operate them, how we make it easier for you all to get registered and participate and make sure that you're getting what you hope to get out of NextFest. Ria?
Yeah, and I'm Ria. I sit with the Steam release team and have the honor of working and talking with a bunch of developers like you on getting your games up on Steam, and also work on fests like NextFest. So excited to have you all here. As mentioned, please put all of your questions in the Q&A channel. It's much easier for us to monitor that way. And I guess we'll just go ahead and get started. So Jasmina is starting us off with the question, what is the difference between the two live streams? There is none, other than they are at different times of day, presumably. So I'm assuming here that we're talking about the official NextFest live stream slots that you guys have as part of NextFest. And those are 2 one-hour slots where you are going to be pushed to the very top of the list of live streams on the NextFest page. Be sure to start those on the dot on the hour. They do run hour to hour, so if you start at 9:30, for example, you're only going to get 30 minutes of that featuring. But there's no big difference between the two slots. It's just to allow you 2 different times of day to use to broadcast. So we would advise splitting it up. So for instance, I want to do a 1 p.m. and a 2 p.m. slot. You probably want to pick a 1 p.m. slot on this day and maybe try a 3 p.m. slot or something like that on another day.
Yeah, imagine the audience for NextFest is worldwide. And so you may want to try targeting 2 different time zones to be able to connect with audiences in different parts of the world. I'm going to pick up a question from Majik. Hi, I wanted to ask about the press preview. How does it work? Do you need to opt in somehow? How do we be sure to be able to participate? So we'll talk a little bit about how the press preview works at a high level. It is really just a period 10 days prior to the start of NextFest, where we give a sneak peek of the page itself, the NextFest page, and the list of participating games to a hand-selected set of press that we know and trust and have worked with over many years. So we give them the ability to basically see how, what games are going to be participating in NextFest, give them a chance to try out any demos that are live at that time, and be able to start preparing lists of things that they want to recommend to their readers. So we've seen as an outcome of this that as soon as NextFest starts, a lot of great press organizations have their top 10 favorites that we're excited to play in NextFest, those kinds of lists. So as you're thinking about your participation in NextFest, our word of advice in order to maybe get the most out of that press preview is that we recommend setting your demo live at the beginning of that press preview period. So that would be making your demo live and playable 10 days prior to the actual start of NextFest. It's useful to keep in mind, you can set your demo live at any point between now and NextFest. There's no reason to wait necessarily, unless you have something in particular that you're trying to line up the announcement with. So if you want to get the most out of that press preview, go ahead and set your demo live at the beginning of that press preview. If you don't set your demo live at the beginning of that press preview and you set it, you wait until the start of NextFest, that's also totally fine. We will still share with press the fact that your game is participating in NextFest. They just won't be able to try out your demo ahead of time.
We've got a question from Prosh. Are you guaranteed to be featured in the NextFest that you sign up for? Unfortunately, no. As much as we would love to feature every single one of you, that means we're just running an event. So that's what we're doing. So we're kind of featuring all of you. So if you join an NextFest, so long as you have a store page in the coming soon phase and you have a live demo, we're going to be showing you on the NextFest page. But for featuring opportunities like the official live stream or the official trailer, unfortunately, we can't get everyone in there. We don't have enough time. So there's no guarantees on whether you'll be selected for that or not.
But if you registered for NextFest and you set your demo live before NextFest starts, or at the moment NextFest starts, then your game is included in NextFest. So people can find your game. It'll be organized under the different categories and subgenres that make sense and apply to your demo, your game. So as long as you have registered and set your demo live and have a coming soon store page live, those are the prerequisites. As long as you do those things, then your game is included in Next Fest. But as Ria said, for special featuring, we select kind of a small handful of games to kind of represent a broad selection of different genres and themes that we use to feature in like the trailer that we produce and the official live stream we run.
We've got another question. What are some effective ways to be more visible when you're featured in Next Fest? Okay, so I'm going to assume we're talking about featuring here as in just being in Next Fest. So the two things that we really recommend, one, make sure that you're using those live stream slots. It does push you to a very visible position at the top of the Next Fest page. So be sure to use those if you have a live stream set up and you're ready for that. And then our second thing is make sure that the tags on your registration page and the tags on your game are accurate. There are a lot of games in Next Fest, and the best way to make sure that the customer that is looking for your kind of game finds your game is to make sure that you're tagging it appropriately. So we've got our categories: action, adventure. I don't remember the other ones off the top of my head, but make sure you're tagging it appropriately, because if you are a primarily adventure game, but you're not in the adventure tab, you're probably going to miss out on a lot of customers that might be interested in your title. So those are the two big things that we would recommend ahead of Next Fest starting.
We got a question from someone that's a little nervous about the state of their demo and wondering when is this kind of the last chance for them to opt back out of the festival, in particular if they want to participate in a future edition of Next Fest. So there's two answers to that question. If at some point, once we close registration, we're looking for the set of games that we do intend to include in our trailer and our live stream. And at some point, I don't know. Have we sent those out already, Ria, for the people who we have selected to feature?
No, the selection process is still ongoing. Okay.
So at some point in the next couple of weeks, I think we will send out notifications to the teams that we intend to feature in those in the live stream or the trailer, in which case we would like to know right away if you don't think you can make it. If you haven't received that, if you don't receive that communication, and really it's a small number of games, it's like 30 or 40 games, so it's not a lot. If you haven't received that communication, then you can wait and work on your demo and see if you can make it, and you can opt out the morning before Next Fest starts, the day before, 2 days before, anything like that. You might want to opt out before the press preview if you think you're not going to be able to make it. So that is 10 days before the start of Next Fest. So those are some of the deadlines I think to keep in mind. And keep in mind, if you know that you're not going to be able to make it, if you're not going to be able to produce a demo in time for Next Fest, that's totally fine. Go ahead and cancel your registration. That will keep you eligible to sign back up for a future edition of Next Fest. So maybe then the what's the next one? October edition will be a good fit for your timeline.
Chris has a question. Is it allowed to update our Steam store page and the demo after the verification process? So yes, this is true on Steam in general. We only have you go through the store page review and the build review once. After that, if you want to make updates, go ahead. We know that you guys want to squash bugs and add anything to your store page. So there's no need to go through the validation process again. We will say though, we aren't going to do the check for you, so you better do the check for yourself. Make sure your demo runs properly. It's entirely possible for you to break that after we go through verification. So just be sure that everything looks and is working appropriately, and you can go ahead and change that at any time.
I'll jump in on the next question, which is a question about the special marketing materials and inclusion. So I was looking back at our documentation. It looks like we intend to send out notifications for that by March 25th or thereabouts. So if if we get past March 25th and you haven't received an email from us about that, then you kind of don't need to worry about any of those deadlines. If you have kind of between registration and now-ish, we've been looking at store pages, looking at game trailers, trying to anticipate which games might be an interesting cross-section of genres to feature in our marketing materials. So if you're in the process of reworking your store page right now, I can't promise whether we looked at your store page before that change or after that change. So the best you can do is, make the changes you need to make to your store page so that you're putting your best foot forward, and you may or may not get selected, and that's okay. There's a lot of components and a lot of visibility to NextFest, and getting included in those marketing materials is honestly a really small portion of visibility overall for NextFest. Really, players are going to find your games a lot of different ways during NextFest and through NextFest. So I wouldn't sweat inclusion in those marketing materials.
We've got a question. Will it help to be considered for official marketing materials to have a working demo up? As Alden mentioned, we're still in the process of getting all of this set up in terms of selecting our candidates. We will be messaging that out in 2 weeks or so keep an eye on your inbox. If we pick you for official marketing materials, there is a separate deadline for when we'd love to have your demo available to be reviewed. And that date is April 29th. But as mentioned, we'll let you know if we pick your game, and we'll have all of the deadlines for working demos and all of that in that email. So just hold tight, work on your store page, make sure it looks good and it's an accurate representation of your game, and just keep an eye out for an email. And that's all you need to do right now.
Jamina asks a question about how do journalists come in contact with game developers? So in particular, this is in reference to the press preview that we send out to press that are looking at. So actually, I guess there's kind of two parts to this. During the press preview, we send out a list of not only the games that are intending to participate, but the contact information that you filled in when you registered your game. If you have any doubts about whether you filled that in correctly or completely, you can look back at your registration. You'll find that link on your app landing page in Steamworks. So below I think it's marketing and visibility, there's a list of fests that your game is eligible for, and you'll find NextFest under there. You can go ahead and check out your registration, and you can update that if you want to change your press contact information in there. So simply, if you've filled out those fields, we will share that information with that list of press. And if you haven't, we won't. We'll just share the fact that your game is participating in NextFest. And then it's up to journalists to choose which games they want to reach out to and talk to the developers more about.
Another question about official marketing materials. If we choose to include a game in official marketing materials, how does that usually manifest? So we've got two options for this upcoming NextFest. One is the live stream and one is the trailer. You don't get to pick which one you are going to be in. So just hold tight. We'll let you know what's going on. But those are the two official pieces of media that we put together, is the official live stream and the official trailer.
There's a question from Goran. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on his questions about AI-generated content and in the games. We recently posted a blog post about this in the Steamworks developer forum about how we're, in general, thinking about AI on Steam and AI tools and AI processes. It basically just means as you are preparing your game for release, there's a content survey questionnaire you're going to go through, and it'll ask you some questions about any AI used to generate content for your game or AI services your game might connect with. So as long as you fill that questionnaire out completely and honestly, there shouldn't be any issues. I think take a look for our blog post under the Steamworks developer group.
Next question. When will the templates for NextFest graphical assets be available? They will be absolutely, for sure, available a week before the event starts. We try and get those up earlier, but that's the last what we will guarantee is a week before Next Fest, but hopefully we'll get it up sooner than that.
The next question is about the way that this is phrased, how many indie games participate in Next Fest on average. That's a little bit honestly hard for us to tell how many indie games specifically, because a lot of games are made by different sizes of teams, and indie is kind of a vague term. If you're asking about how many games in general participate in Next Fest, it has fluctuated from edition to edition, but it has been kind of steadily growing over the years. I think the last edition of Next Fest, we had over 1,000 participating games. It's hard for us to know at this point how many will be in the June edition, because we always see that more people register and then drop out over time between registration, closing, and the start of Next Fest as they, for whatever reason, their development plans change. They realize they can't make a demo in time, things like that. So it's hard for us to tell exactly how many, but I would guess there's going to be over 1,000. But we keep looking at how we can organize Next Fest and make sure that we're surfacing games to as many players and the right kind of players as possible.
Question from Megacopter Game, love the name. If we were displayed as coming soon when we registered for Next Fest, but set a release date afterwards, are we still eligible? Yeah, so any game is eligible to participate in one Next Fest. And it just needs to be before you launch. So as long as you're launching after Next Fest, you can have whatever you want displayed in that field. There are titles that, participate in Next Fest 3 years before launch, and there are titles that participate 3 weeks before launch. So it's totally up to you and your game. So long as you're still in a coming soon phase, you're welcome to join. Once per lifetime of game.
Chris has a question about when can we announce our Next Fest participation? Is there a deadline or limitation? I think we're generally pretty flexible on this. It's really up to you. I would caution you against promising that participation too far in advance unless you already have a demo that's done and ready to go. A lot of things can change in the process of trying to craft a good demo. So you may want to wait until you're really, really confident that you're going to be able to deliver a demo before you start getting your fans excited. Having said that, we don't yet have an asset kit up with logos and things like that. That will be coming fairly soon, I believe. And once we have that up, then you can use those to help announce your participation. I think I answered that.
And then we have a question, which I'm going to rephrase slightly, which is, if we've been invited to one of the Steam Fests alongside Steam Next Fest, can we participate in both of those? And the answer is yes. Very few of our fests are either options or yes. Most of the time you can participate in any combination of fests that make sense for your title. There are very limited exceptions to that. For example, Endless Replayability Fest, which is coming up, is not accepting any deck builders because we're doing a separate event for deck building. But aside from that, feel free to participate in as many as makes sense for your title.
Chris has another question. How long or soon after Next Fest can or must we release? Are there any best practices? I think Ria recently just spoke to this topic. It's really up to you and your development schedule. Some developers have the philosophy that it's a good idea to release right after Next Fest, and other developers may not be ready. It could be that you find Next Fest as a useful opportunity to get a bunch of feedback from people that are trying out your demo for the first time, and you may want to make course adjustments to your game based on that feedback. Or you may be all ready to go and you're using Next Fest as kind of a last boost of excitement building and audience building and awareness before you hit launch. So it's really up to you. It's hard to measure whether there's exact best practices in terms of timing or approach to this, but definitely different developers seem to have different philosophical approaches to it.
Joe's got a question. Is it better to be actually live during the live stream slot or to record the best possible presentation of your game being played, pre-recorded, quote unquote, live? Is community engagement a bit factor? We think that it's better to actually be live during the live stream because it feels a little more organic. If you record, the the exact best take of your game being played. I think customers feel a little bit that it's not necessarily the most authentic experience. So it would be our recommendation to actually be live. But, we understand that everyone's got different mitigating factors here. Maybe your internet isn't the most, well, if your internet isn't stable, then that's a different problem. But, maybe you've got good days and bad days when it comes to talking live. Feel free to do what makes the most sense for your title. What we would say is just make sure you're there to watch over chat. People do like to come in and ask questions and ask about inspirations for games and, what kind of game does this play like? And so it's always good to make sure that there's someone on hand to answer those questions.
Next question from Machik is asking about, do we have any restrictions with games that are PEGI 18 rated or anything like that? So I'll talk a little bit about kind of how that works in general on Steam, which applies to really all of our fests. We really leave ratings and content and that up to customer filtering preferences. So if you have an 18 plus rated game, in the process of setting up your store page, you've filled out our content survey. And assuming you've answered that correctly and ticked the boxes to describe the kinds of mature or violent or nudity or things like that that are in your game, then customers have the choices to be able to filter in or out games that contain those kinds of content. As far as specific featuring, things that we might highlight in our trailer, we're probably not going to show really mature content in our trailer because we want to make sure that it's available for all audiences. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we exclude specific games. But if your trailer is entirely mature, then we probably can't pull anything useful from it. But if your trailer has parts of it that we can use that are not all mature content, then it's possible that we can pull some content from that. Again, I wouldn't recraft your trailer specifically trying to get picked up by our featuring team. It's really a small number of games that we select for that, and I wouldn't suggest going through a whole bunch of extra work to try to get the potential chance that we might do that.
We've got a question. If your game is not selected to be featured, is it still possible that Steam or Valve press partners may feature you in their articles? Yes, absolutely. So there's a couple of different things here. On the press side, we give them full access to everything that is participating in NextFest. We give them a sneak peek of what that page is going to look like. So press write all sorts of stuff, and they cover way more titles than we're able to do with our official live stream or our official trailer. And they do a great job of getting the word out. So, I think sometimes that they do a better job than even we do. So yes, you can absolutely be mentioned by press partners without, being selected to be featured. And then after NextFest is over, we do have a recap page that calls out the top demos of NextFest. And so plenty of titles in there. I think we're not featured in any way. It's totally based on performance during NextFest. So don't worry if you don't get chosen for official marketing materials with us. There are plenty of opportunities to have NextFest be a big event for you and to have a lot of press and eyeballs on your titles. So don't worry so much about the official marketing stuff. There's plenty of opportunity aside from that.
It's a good reminder to also think about ways that you can do your own outreach to specific press or influencers or people that are interested in the kind of game that you're making. There's definitely a bunch of different niches out there and people that cover those kinds of games really well, and we may not be in communication with those specific influencers or journalists or whatnot. So, in general, whether it's with NextFest or just the release of your game, figuring out who those influencers and journalists and people are that you can reach out to and, send them a copy of your game or just, get them to take a look at your game and get them excited about it so they can share that with their audience. Moving on to the next question, is NextFest page submissions still open? We have officially closed registration, but we can still let in your game if you need to. Use the support button at the top. Actually, is there a better way? Is that the best way now?
They can just appeal. We've
Okay.
got a new appeal process which works for both Next Fest and other themed fests on Steam. It would be complicated to go over that, but basically, if you go to documentation, it will lead you to a place that will allow you to appeal for inclusion in this upcoming June Next Fest. And if you've missed it and you're not super sure if you're going to be able to make this one, don't forget that we will also be running one in October, and we will be running more in 2025 as well. So plenty of other opportunities to get your game in if you're a little bit away from release.
JT has a question of how many games we intend to include in June Next Fest. Really, we're going to include all the games that register and can deliver a demo and make that live in time for Next Fest. So we're not kicking anybody out of Next Fest. It really depends on how many people register and continue development of their demo and get that all ready in time. I said a little bit earlier in here that we've seen, I think over the last edition, we saw over 1,000 games that ended up participating in the final, as a final count. At this point, just after registration is closed, we don't have a great idea because a lot of games do register and then they'll drop out over the next couple of months as they realize that they're not ready with their demo or their plans have changed or they want to do something else. So I don't have a good answer on exactly how many games.
Joe asks, does a page not being live yet affect if you pick games for official marketing? Can we have trailers and demos up secretly still? This is actually a great question. I'm actually going to extend it to sort of all Steam related stuff, which is we do not use stuff that is not live. So if you've got a trailer that is only staged, if you've got screenshots that are only staged and not published, we're not going to use that. We don't know if you're ready for that to go out into the world. And so for our purposes, we pretend to be your average everyday customer, and we look at your page based on what you've got publicly showing. So if you've got something staged, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to use that. Even if you message us and ask us to use that, that's not something that we're able to accommodate. So if you want us to look at something, make sure it's live.
Joe asks a question, is it allowed, Jana asks a question. I was looking at the wrong one. Is it allowed to have a demo live before Next Fest, or do we need a completely fresh demo for Next Fest? We don't care. That's entirely up to you. There's games that have demos even available already today that will be participating in June Next Fest, and that's totally fine. It's up to you and your schedule and when you are ready with your demo and confident. We've seen some developers that maybe have a demo out well ahead of Next Fest, and then they might take it down for a while and make some updates to it and then ship a different, an updated version based on feedback or progress of the game. But it's really up to you. We don't require that you launch it at a certain time.
We've got what is probably my favorite question of today, which is there a possibility of paid advertising on the Steam platform? So you guys should all know that there is actually no paid advertising anywhere on Steam. So when you see a game show up as a takeover at launch, or when you get a marketing message about a game that you own having an update, none of that is paid advertising. It's all based on customer interest and other customer-focused metrics. So no, there's no paid advertising on the Steam platform. You can't pay to be placed higher on Next Fest or anywhere on Steam, really. So we encourage you to take that money and invest it in marketing in other places.
Next question from Christoph, and I apologize if I mispronounce names. I'm notoriously bad at this. This question is, for official coverage, would it matter at all for June's Next Fest if we were chosen to participate in some previous edition but didn't manage to ship our demo and materials in time? So when we're looking at games to pick up for our official live stream or trailer, we don't really take into account ones that have signed up and dropped out of previous Next Fest editions. We just start new by looking at all the sets of games that are registered for that edition of Next Fest. So your past history has no bearing on that.
We've got a question. Are we seeing a lot of games with AI-generated content or services in this next fest? We haven't really been reviewing it in that way, so it's hard to say. Definitely more than the previous next fest, if only because we've finally have a policy on AI-generated content. So unfortunately, I'm not sure what percentage is in that category, but probably more than zero.
Isaiah asks, is there any publicly available data on performance of games that participate in Next Fest, i.e. sales, wish lists, views by genre? We have, it's been a couple of years now. We've been running Next Fest quite a while, but we posted a blog post previously that looked at game participation in Next Fest and kind of its effect on wish list performance of those games. And I think if I can recap that summary briefly, we basically saw, a huge boost in wish lists on most games that participate in Next Fest, and then we saw that effect continue on after Next Fest ended. So it seemed, from what we could tell, that games largely benefited quite a bit from participation in Next Fest, and then also saw that boost in attention and awareness had a nice, long, lingering effect afterwards as well. Having said that, we haven't tried to do any specific analysis by genre or thing like that. Those kinds of analysis tend to bear very little fruit in that there's so many variables that go into a game's success or performance that looking at just one thing like genre is unlikely to have enough data points to be useful and interesting, and is not likely to actually give us representative data that we can use to promise or forecast anything. But I think, in general, what I would say about Next Fest is it's a great opportunity to get a bunch of visibility for your game. And from almost everybody that we've seen, it generates a bunch of excitement and wish lists that seems to have some lingering positive benefit as well.
Goran has a question, which I'm not sure I'm understanding, but I'm going to try to answer anyways. And the question is, what else must we do if we did register in time and publish the demo in time to not somehow lose the chance to participate in Next Fest? Those are the only two things you have to do, actually, is get registered and publish your demo in time. So as long as you've got those two things done, you're going to be showing up in Next Fest. So should be easy breezy if you've got all of those done. And then we've got a question. Any thoughts about doing a more tightly curated fest? Seems there's an increasing amount of noise in the store or in Next Fest. Yeah, this is a great problem for us to have. In the beginning, I think we were a little worried that, Next Fest wouldn't be interesting for developers like you. But we're at a point where, Next Fest has a lot of participants, and we're super happy about that. And we totally understand that, there are a lot of games and it is pretty noisy at this point. So we'll think about it. No guarantees right now.
Yeah, I think we're unlikely to try curating or deciding which games look or work well enough to be included in Next Fest. That's generally just not, we haven't seen that kind of approach of curating work well because a couple of things. The audience of people that buy games on Steam and are interested in checking out demos in Next Fest is a huge variety. And there's no way that a small group of us can anticipate what kind of interests or things players are looking for and are excited about. Really, there's a game for everyone out there, and whatever game you're making probably has a different audience than the 40 other people in this Next Fest chat right here. So, what we look at then is how best can we make sure that Next Fest is recommending your game to the players that play the kinds of games that you're making. So what we look at is we want to make sure that all the games that want to participate can participate. And then it's a problem of making sure that players can find what they're looking for and that we can also proactively surface your game to the people that are most likely interested in it. And that's true for Steam as a whole. That's why we let so many games onto Steam. We don't think it's valuable for a small group of us in Seattle to be the deciders of which games can have access to the platform and reach customers on Steam or not.
I'm answering a question that we've already answered over text if you want to take the next one.
Perfect. The next let's see, the next question here. Do you think creating a special trailer for Next Fest could be worth it? So I imagine this is a developer asking, should I put up a new trailer of my game just for Next Fest? I don't think that if you have a good trailer that is already representative of your game, I don't see that there's going to be a lot of value in putting up a new one. There's probably not necessarily a lot of players that are seeing your page for a second time that would notice whether that's new or not. Having said that, there's a couple of things you probably want to think about when you're crafting your trailer. Has your game developed a lot and progressed a lot since you put up your last trailer? You may have new things that you want to show off, new gameplay mechanics, updated artwork, things like that. The other thing to keep in mind is that players are really looking for what is it like to actually play this game. So if the trailer that you have up on your store page now is mostly a cinematic or a teaser, you may want to, I strongly recommend cutting a gameplay trailer and putting that up as your first trailer on the store page. That's really going to help players understand what your game is, how they're going to be interacting with the world, what kind of game it is, all of those things. That's really, in our experience, what players are looking for. So I would highly recommend crafting your trailer around that. If you already have those boxes ticked and you have a suitable trailer up, I wouldn't recommend going out of your way to make a new one just for the sake of Next Fest.
If we have YouTubers, streamers, or other influencers playing our demo, what is the best time to have them play it? Should it be before, during, or after Next Fest to gain maximum visibility? And what are the best practices? I'm not sure that we actually have good information here, but I will give you a little bit of my own opinion here, which is whatever time you pick, you should have it be at a time when your demo is still available. Nothing sucks more than watching someone play a game and not being able to play it myself immediately after. So to that end, I would probably recommend either before or during Next Fest when your demo is most likely to be live. After Next Fest, if you've had a lot of momentum during Next Fest, maybe that's a good opportunity. You'll probably have better luck talking to other developers in the community who have tried out these things for themselves. We don't really have any good advice. We just hear what you guys say. So I'd recommend reaching out to the community on that one.
The next question is about when you're creating your live stream type events in Steam, is there best practices or recommendations around how to title that? Should it be just game title Next Fest stream, or should it be something about the game, some catchy tagline? I'm not sure that it matters that much. You want to think about the context in which these will appear. So that the title, so this is about the two events that you get to create that are called Next Fest live stream type events. Primarily what scheduling those events does is it puts your game in a schedule on Next Fest, and your game will get featured as one of the featured live streams during that hour. So really, the title of the post itself doesn't appear that prominently in that context. In those contexts, we generally put like the name of the game. Those events do appear on your game's store page. So you might want to title it something that makes the most sense in that context. And in that context, probably Next Fest live stream, some kind of headline along those lines makes the most sense so that players understand what they're going to get when they click on that event and open it up.
A question from Nate. From Valve's point of view, what is good duration of demo content? 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour? I know ideally it's whatever shows off the game best, but is there a duration that seems to perform better? Oh, that's a tough question. I do kind of want to fall back to, like whatever shows off the game the best. And so I would say don't optimize for a duration of demo. I would optimize for creating a demo experience that shows off your game the way you want it to be shown off to customers. So for some games, that's, a technically infinitely long demo because you allow them to do the first run or the first level of procedurally generated roguelike game. In that case, you want to make sure that that's tightly crafted and you don't we probably don't want to arbitrarily cut someone off at a exact time mark. But if you've got, a very cute casual puzzle game, maybe 10 minutes is all you really need to get across, what kind of gameplay your title is. And so, I'd optimize for what your game is like more than a specific duration, because that's going to vary between customers. Some customers are going to prefer the short ones and someone might prefer the long ones. So I don't think there's like a right answer here.
Brett asks a question about live streams, and is it possible to live stream multiple times during the fest so you can target different time zones? If so, will we have to apply for a slot, or is it whenever? So the way this works, we give you up to 2 live stream spots, and you schedule those by going and creating a post under your game the way that you would if you were posting a news update or patch notes or things like that for your game. You'll see if you're registered for Next Fest, there's a new category at the top called Next Fest Livestream. You can create up to 2 of those, and you can pick whatever time makes sense for you. I think we would generally try to recommend, maybe pick a time in the morning and a time in the evening so that you can have 2 different time zone coverages, and that will cover a wide range of different customers. But also, you probably want to look at the developer preview for the Next Fest page, which we will send you in an email soon, or maybe we have already. I can't remember at what point we are in the process. But at some point, you will receive an email that has a big link to, hey, check out the developer preview. Make sure we've categorized your game properly. With that, it's got a schedule of the live streams that have been created so far. So you can look at the different time periods over the course of the week, and you can look for some quiet times that work for you and schedule your game and your live stream during those times. I would not recommend piling in on a time that a bunch of other people have picked, because that means during that time spot, Steam is going to be selecting from that larger pool of live streams. Having said that, there's also value to just live streaming separately from having one of these scheduled time slots. If for whatever reason we get to an hour during Next Fest when nobody has scheduled a live stream, we'll fall back to just showing a random live stream to users as they come to the page. So your live stream could show up then. I don't know how many hours like that we actually have. I think there's so many people, so many games participating in Next Fest, and so many live streams that we have a fairly full schedule over the course of the week. But there's quite a few hours in the week, so I'm sure that's not fully covered. And then think about what's most interesting about a live stream. And part of the benefit is that it shows up on your store page and it shows exactly what it's like to play the game, which is of high interest to players. If you're already capturing that with a really well-crafted gameplay trailer, then the need to live stream on your store page is probably not as high. But if you haven't yet created a trailer that is really focused on gameplay, then the live stream can be really beneficial to players in that way.
We've got a question. We were unable to publish our store page until today. Is it possible to know if we were already passed in the review process for marketing materials inclusion? And can we request that we be looked at now that the store page is live? Unfortunately, as mentioned previously, we look at what's public, and we did that when the deadline closed on registering for this upcoming June Next Fest, partially why it's so far out. So unfortunately, if you didn't have a live store page at that time, we weren't able to look at it probably. We didn't look at it exactly, on February 28th, but it was probably around then. So it was probably not looked at. However, as mentioned again previously, there are plenty of other opportunities to get good visibility during Next Fest. If press picks you up, or if customers play your demo a lot, you're going to get a lot more visibility out of that than being part of the official live stream or being in the trailer. So, not the end of the world to have the store page be a little bit late. If your game isn't coming out until after October, we do have an October Next Fest coming up. So if you really want to try and gamble, I guess, for the chance to be in the official marketing materials, you're welcome to go ahead and join a future Next Fest. But we would not prioritize. We would tell you not to prioritize that, since you should do what makes the most sense for your title. And there are plenty of other opportunities to be featured across the internet, other than our own stuff.
A person named Penn has a question. When doing your 2 live streams, would it be better to start a new game for the second live stream or continue an old one to show more of the game? So this is kind of an interesting question, because it's really getting back to what would be interesting to show in the live stream itself. Keeping in mind, players are probably not going to show up and hit it just right to see both of your live streams. So trying to create some kind of continuous narrative across those 2, I don't think is worth spending any time trying to sweat over. The other thing you might want to keep in mind is the beginning of your game that interesting? Do you even want to spend your first live stream showing the introduction or the tutorial, or do you want to spend that hour like showing something deeper into the game of what is it like when you're running around and you're powerful and you have some cool weapons and you can beat the bosses and things like that? So it takes a little bit to figure out and think about, from an audience perspective, what's going to be interesting to see in that live stream, especially if it's a first experience with the game. What is the kind of thing that might hook a player and get them excited about the cool things that they can do in the game, the kinds of environments, the way that they're going to be interacting with the world. So, just like crafting a good demo, crafting a good live stream will take some design and planning ahead of time.
Question. I have noticed that many games in previous Next Fest events follow up with a 1.0 release at some point after Next Fest. Is there any reason a game shouldn't follow up from Next Fest with an early access release instead? So early access titles, I think you're promising a very specific thing to your audience. An early access game is meant to be a game that is still in progress, that is not fully complete, that is looking for customer and community input on what they should do. So you'll see a lot of the really successful early access graduates took into account customer feedback, customer asks, and other things from that game community into what the final 1.0 release was. So I wouldn't think of it as a opportunity to get more marketing or less marketing. It's just about, the state of your game and what you want to do. If you've got a linear narrative game and you're pretty much done with the story, I probably wouldn't recommend that you release that as an early access title. I think there are a lot of expectations on what an early access title is, and it's okay if your game isn't that. There's no downside to just releasing into 1.0. So as with a lot of the advice that we give during this Q&A, it's highly dependent on your game and your audience.
If you look in Steamworks documentation, there's a nice big long article about early access in particular. There's a couple of YouTube videos embedded in there where a bunch of people, well, myself included in one of the videos, talk about Next Fest and kind of how to consider it, how to think of it, what kind of game might work well, what kind of game might not work well. I highly encourage you to check those out. That you'll learn a bunch about, maybe how to think about early access for your game. The next question, and actually I'm going to pause for a second here. We've got about 9 minutes left in this session. We have 2 more questions in the queue, so if you still have questions you've been waiting to ask, please go ahead and post those in the Q&A channel down at the bottom. We're getting through all the questions here, so that's great. And if you have something left that you want to ask us, please do so now. So the question is, would it be useful to also consider Curator Connect at the same time as Steam Next Fest? So Curator Connect is a system in Steam where you can send copies of your game to particular curators that are set up and established within Steam. That's really based on your game itself, not the demo. So you want to think about what is the state of your game, and are you ready to send that to people to start checking out and preview? If you're ready to do that, then I think that timing could align neatly. It's really up to you. We haven't done really any analysis in that area, so it's hard to say whether there's a right or wrong way to do it. As with most things in Steam, And actually with game development, frankly, there is no one right way to do things. It's really going to depend on your game, your situation, your timeline of development and audience building that you're doing in general around your game. So take all those things into consideration. And if you're designing a game, think about also the design of your audience building and awareness.
Question. Are you thinking about showing a game's current participation in a Next Fest and/or the availability of a demo in the Steam wish list? That is a very good suggestion. We will think about it. That's not something we currently have implemented, but that's definitely an interesting idea.
An anonymous attendee has a question similar to the Curator Connect question. Is running a Steam playtest immediately prior to or around Next Fest a good or bad idea? Again, like most features on Steam and game development in general, there is no one right way to do things. And I don't necessarily think that there's many things that are necessarily a bad idea to do in every single circumstance. So it's going to depend a lot on your game. Playtests are probably useful as a way. I mean, if you're putting up a demo around the same time that you have a playtest, those things probably have a very similar kind of content in them already. Things that playtests can do that demos can't do is you could limit access to a playtest. So if you are, say, making a multiplayer game and you're worried about server load, it may be beneficial to put up a playtest earlier and kind of test out inviting in more and more players or allowing in more and more players as you kind of scale up your server infrastructure and see, how much you need to handle, how much you can handle. But having a playtest and a demo up at the same time, there's probably not a lot of benefit to doing both of those things at the same time.
And then question, what is the best way to collect player feedback during Next Fest? Would something third-party work, or are there any recommended features integrated into Steam? And then a future request, it would be nice if there was a feature similar to reviews on the store page for just the demo. First point, great feedback. We'll definitely talk about that more internally. But as for the best way to collect player feedback, just make sure you've got somewhere to direct them. Your game does have the Steam discussions forum, so we've seen folks create, demo feedback threads. Customers will go and make threads for you in discussions anyways. So as long as you are directing them to give you feedback somewhere, I think that's the thing that matters most. People aren't really talking to each other very much in terms of like a community at this stage. So whether that's something third party or on Steam itself, I don't think we have any strong recommendations either way.
Yeah, we've seen in general that different developers have different preferences about where they communicate with their audience. So you may really like your Discord channel and you have it really set up and lots of different interesting sub-channels and all of that, and that's where you want to collect feedback. That's totally fine. You should put a big button in your main menu and make it really easy and really obvious where players can go and give you feedback. If you want that destination to be something like a Steam forum, there's a special URL that you can use within your game that will open the Steam overlay and take them directly to that URL if it's a Steam URL. If you look, I think in our documentation, if you look for open URL or open in Steam, open in overlay, I actually don't remember the exact term, but there's a special format of link that you can call from within your game. So that way it opens up the overlay on top of the game. The user's already logged into Steam. They can post in your Steam forums right away. It's super low friction then for them to be able to give you feedback. But whether you want to, have it submit to a Jira bug tracker or go to Discord or the Steam forums is really up to you and where you want to interact with your community. And one last question.
Vero asks, would you mind explaining how to fill up the press form for the Steam Next Fest again? Sorry, I missed this part. It's at the bottom of your registration page for the game in question. So if you go to your Next Fest registration page, scroll to the bottom, there's a little place for you to put your contact information. That's it. It's really straightforward. give us your email if you'd like us to pass that along to press or not. Totally up to you, totally optional. But yeah.
And with that, we have answered all 54 questions that have come in. So thank you all. And pretty perfect timing because we only have 2 minutes left allocated here anyways. So thank you all for being great audience and asking great questions. We hope you found this valuable. Hopefully we answered your questions satisfactorily. And we look forward to seeing your games pop up in Next Fest.
Yeah, it was good chatting with you all today. Remember, we've got our documentation page, which I'm going to post here. There are deadlines. Please don't forget them. And Alden, well, I think Alden and I, some of us will be back on May 22nd for another edition of the Q&A. So if you've got burning questions, feel free to reach out to us through Steam support. We do see your tickets there and are often the ones responding to you. But otherwise, we'll see you for the next one, or we'll just see you at Next Fest. Bye, guys.